Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of podcasts brought to you by the team at Export to Japan. I'm Steve Crane, and I'm part of the team doing the interviewing today. And today we have two amazing special guests, and we are going to be looking into all the arrangements around the Osaka Expo 2025. And it may seem like it's a long way away, 2025, but I think there's a lot of plans already underway. And it's certainly very exciting to hear much more about this wonderful event that is underway. And to help us understand more about it, we have two guests today. I'd like to welcome Minami-san and Kaoru-san, also known as Kei. I hope it's okay to call you Kei. And these two gentlemen have been working in the project and involved in the project for some time, and we look forward to hearing more from them all about it. Before we dive into that, I'd just like to ask you all if you wouldn't mind to hit that subscribe button. We have a whole program of new webinars and podcasts coming up from Export to Japan. So by subscribing, you'll be notified in advance. And if you enjoy today's content and find that useful, please click that like button because that helps us so much. So without further ado, I'd like to just ask our two guests to perhaps introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about their role and their involvement in the expo. So Kei, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. My name is Nemoto. I'm with Dentsu Inc. You may be familiar and may not be familiar. Dentsu Inc. is what you may consider typically an advertising agency. Although Dentsu Inc. is an international agency, and in a traditional sense, we're very different from what you may be familiar with from your typical Western agency, in that we don't do just advertising. Our scope goes beyond advertising in multiple areas. We have multinational clients, not only in Japan, but in other countries as well. And obviously, we have a lot of Japanese clients, both domestically here in Japan and operating outside of Japan. So our client base is quite vast, Japan and outside of Japan. Hopefully, when you consider coming into Japan, or you may already be in Japan, we can be a valuable source in your marketing and communication needs.
Thank you, Kei. And just so we can fully understand your sort of involvement or your relationship with the expo, what's your involvement?
Yes.
So far?
Dentsu Inc. has been involved with past expos, Dubai 2020 included, and naturally so, our interest is with Expo 2025 as well. We have a dedicated task force to work with the organizer. My role is to interface with the expo organizer in bringing the expos together and basically finalize and bring it to fruition in 2025. We have about 40 plus members as of today, and we plan to expand beyond that to boost the support as we go forward toward the final days into 2025.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And welcome once again. So
thank you.
Minami-san, how about you? What's your role and who are you representing?
Thank you, Steve. My name is Minami Uchida from E&Y Japan. Hopefully everybody knows E&Y. We are one of the big four professional firms globally. And then, I am like a partner who is leading a practice of E&Y Japan to provide professional services to major or mega international events, such as Olympics or such as Expo 25. And my involvement in Expo 2025 is using my experience from Rugby World Cup 2019 and Tokyo 2020 involvement. I have been providing project management support to Expo 25 organizer. So hopefully, I can provide some input to you guys. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And once again, great to have you on board. You two gentlemen have clearly got a wealth of experience. And so I think we've got the right two people to help us understand a little bit more about the expo. So it's great to have you both here. Well, if we could kick off, and Kei, maybe I'll come back to you here. Could you, but just sort of by way of introduction, some people may already have heard about the expo, but I'm willing to bet that there's a good number of our listeners and viewers that maybe haven't heard of it or don't know too much about it. So to kick us off, could you tell us a bit more about the expo and the background and what it's all about, please?
Sure, Steve. Thank you. As you mentioned, we may still need to do better in terms of getting Expo 2025 aware. As most of you are probably aware, the Dubai 2020 just ended a few months back. So the attention is more with Dubai. Now we hope that it will shift to Osaka. Now, Expo 2025 is scheduled to be held in 2025, obviously, April 13th to October 13th. So it's a spring, summer, and beginning of autumn type of period. Again, April 13th, 2025 to October 13th, 2025. Over the 184 days, the projection for the visitor count is at 28.2 million.
Woo!
Pretty big. Yeah. May not be as large as Dubai, but still yet, it's a quite significant number. And another feature to note is that for this expo, there is a virtual element that is being planned. So 28.2 million projected visitor count, plus anyone who visits through the virtual platform. And so we don't know how many that would be, but we hope that there will be a boost of visitors in that virtual aspect as well. In terms of the history of World Expo in Japan, the last one that was held in Osaka was back in 1970. Noting that this is the largest visitor count expos after Shanghai Expo. Shanghai received the most number of visitors when they had their expo, but the second largest was the Osaka Expo back in 1970. We are welcoming the second expo here in Osaka region in 2025. There was a horticultural expo in 1990, and if you include that, this would essentially be the third expo in Osaka region. The last expo in Japan was back in 2005, held in Aichi, which is a metropolitan area of Nagoya. And it's been 20 years since 2005 that Japan hosts a World Expo in 2025.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a great introduction. And actually, just so that we can understand a little bit more about that Osaka region, that's part of a wider area. Is it the Kansai region? Is it known as?
Correct. Yeah, I think the proper word would be a Kansai region, as you are probably familiar with Tokyo, which is in a Kanto region with different municipalities surrounding Tokyo. But similarly, Kansai is the second largest economic area zone in Japan, with Osaka being in the center, but you may be familiar with places like Kyoto, possibly Kobe. But those cities and municipalities, prefectures, basically form what we call a Kansai region, the second largest population center in Japan.
Steve, did you ask this question because, well, the name of this expo is Osaka Period Kansai Expo 25. Right. And the point is that Osaka, there's an intention by Osaka municipal government, local government, that they would like to host this event as a Kansai, to the entire Kansai area, not by Osaka only.
Right. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, it's good. It's very good to know that and make that clear. And I was just a little bit thinking about the logistics of all that. I mean, that number you shared with us of the projection of around 28 million visitors, that is colossal, isn't it? That's, I mean, that's not far off half the population of the UK, quite honestly. It's a big, mind-blowing number and terribly exciting. And of course, that will bring all kinds of logistical challenges and opportunities. Just a very basic question. I mean, in terms of visitors flying in and out, where is the nearest international airport to the event?
Yes, the international airport in this region would be Kansai International Airport, which is basically Osaka's international airport, about an hour away from the center of Osaka. But we have other airports, domestic airports, in namely Kobe Airport and Osaka's International Airport, which is formerly an international airport, but now dedicated to domestic use. And so people flying into other airports in Japan as their port of entry, there may be traveling domestically, flying into those domestic airports. Obviously, Osaka has a central station in terms of Japan Rail with the bullet train, Shinkansen. You can travel across the core corridor of railway travels from Tokyo or down south from Kyushu, Fukuoka, and onward using the rail system as well. And so either your first port of entry is someplace else, travel domestically, or you fly in directly to Kansai International.
Great, thank you. Very clear, thank you. And Minami, if I could just come back to you a little bit now, that was a great point you just made, sort of clarifying the position with Kansai and Osaka. The next thing that might be interesting for us to know is, in terms of the sort of organization and the organizations behind the expo, in terms of the government level and sort of private sector, can you just give us a little bit of comment about how that is structured and who's involved and who the key players are?
Thank you, Steve. That is a great question. First, it's just we didn't understand, and then just like now we understand who's involved. First of all, Expo probably just it is universal. Expo cannot be held without support from central government of a nation. So of course, central Japanese government is heavily involved in this event, and also Osaka Prefecture. And then Osaka City. I'm sorry, just it is a little bit complicated for somebody who doesn't understand Japanese like a government system. But there's like Osaka Prefecture, larger part. They are like a larger part of the area, covers a larger area, and Osaka City. And so those two local governments are heavily involved. And then on top of that, private sectors, for example, like a chain of commerce of Kansai area, is heavily involved, and then entire Japanese private sectors are just very interested in this opportunity. So, and then just like from a budget point of view, that for example, like for constructing the site, I'm sorry, just I forgot the actual number. It's about and especially like in US dollars, I cannot tell how much, but the budget is going to be allocated by three parts, and one third is going to be assumed by central Japanese government, and the second part is going to be assumed by both jointly Osaka Prefecture and Osaka City, and third one is going to be assumed by private sectors, mainly by donations. So by looking at how we are going to fund this event, you could see central Japanese government, Osaka local governments, and then private sector, all three are heavily involved.
Got it. And it's interesting there, you mentioned that, approximately one third might come from the private sector and it could come through donations. Is it, you may or may not know the answer to this, but I'm just curious, is it anticipated that most of that support would come from Japanese domestic companies, or do you think there will be international companies coming in at that level?
Well, I mean, just like I'm not the expert on that, but based on the history, and then, of course, if international companies are willing to make a donation, probably they are more than happy to receive it.
Good point.
I bet.
Very good point.
But I guess we have a unique among Japanese companies. We have a unique system wherever just like we as a Japanese society, Japan society is going to host a very society-wide important event, or like a ceremony or things like that. We have a custom that all private sectors make donations, so that we can use that fund for a particular event. And then of course Expo 25 is one of them. So at least just like I'm very sure majority of the budget is going to be achieved by the donation from Japanese companies. That's what they are expecting.
My understanding is the same. Obviously, a large budget size is required to even get the construction started. Construction meaning the site of the expo is a reclaimed land, so there's that process that needs to kick off before everything else. And therefore, there has to be a projection of the budget and feasibilities and what have you. And I'm sure that the organizer has went through the process of communicating with potential donors, donation companies, to really work at the numbers. And I'm sure, before they even got everything started, pretty much they're probably close to the budget that they need. It's just an assumption, but I'm assuming that that's the case.
Yeah, I guess you would think so, and I'm sure that work has been going on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very exciting. And linked to that, I guess the theme of the expo. I know in previous expos, there's always been a sort of dedicated theme, and it's all around positive, good causes and good messages. And how about for the expo this year? Is that information available now on what the theme and the
Yes.
direction?
Well, you can check the website of the Expo 25. The association, the organizer of Expo 25 has a very good website where you can visit and learn about their themes. As like you said, the main theme is lives, with three sub themes. One is, I'm sorry, just to be honest, I'm not very good at this, but hopefully just I can explain good enough.
Sure.
The three sub themes. One is saving lives. And then, which means that we like to make sure we like to create a world where people can enjoy healthy and long lives, without worrying about the water, food, and then maybe sanitation, things like that. So that's a one sub theme. And the second sub theme is still lives, empowering lives. So we like to create a future where everybody can demonstrate lives without, using their unique skill sets, or by empowering how we work, and then education, how we educate our people. And maybe that the key point is going to be AI or robotics, those things. And then third piece is going to be connecting lives. Creating a world, everybody talks about diversity. We like to make sure that everybody is going to be connected with different background, things like that. So those three themes, and then also those three themes are going to be connected using SDGs. 17 goals of SDGs, and then Expo 2025. The organizer said that. The reason why we are going to have an Expo 25 in Osaka is because try to achieve SDGs, try to support the Japan society to achieve the target of SDGs. So SDGs, and then I learned a little bit. Just they're using Society 5.0. And then so those themes, and the AI, big data, IoT, and then I'm sorry, I forgot big data. I said big data, robotics, and the biotechnology. Those are the 5 things about Society 5.0.
Yeah.
So SDGs and then Society 5.0 are associated with those 3 sub-themes of lives. That's a big picture of the theme of Expo 25.
Isn't that incredible? Absolutely wonderful. And of course, I fully understand that this expo is a global expo, and you're going to be having international visitors from all over the world taking part and coming to visit. But I know from my experience with Japan, all of those themes you just spoke about, I think the rest of the world can learn a lot from Japan in so many of those areas with the way that you're currently thinking and working in Japan. So there's no doubt that this expo is going to be a huge milestone on a global basis in terms of sharing best practice, thoughts, knowledge,
right,
to make the world a better place in line with those themes you're talking about. So that's very exciting. Yeah, amazing. And what we will definitely do is we'll include the link to the website that you refer to. We'll make sure that that's included on the podcast so that people can click through and look in more detail to drill down into that further. So thank you.
One of the trivia, if I may, when the organizer when during the bidding process, there was no organizer, but when Japan was bidding for the expo to be received in Osaka, it was back in about 2020. And obviously the SDGs goal is set at 2030, placing 2025 smack in the middle of the interim progress report. And that's where the bidding took place, where let's use the Expo 2025 as sort of a report card interim measurement to see how not only Japan, but other countries have progressed in terms of achieving the SDGs goals. Yes, we have achieved certain levels, but also recognizing where we fall short. And from 2025 on to 2030, meaning the legacy of the Expo 2025 carries over to further accelerating the achievement of SDGs. So that's one of the rationales why this Expo is designing the future lives of our life. Designing future society for our lives is the reason for that main theme.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. That makes perfect sense and very, very clear how that all fits together with the timing of the bigger agenda. And Kay, you mentioned a few moments ago, you touched a little bit on the sort of site itself, and I wanted to just come back so we can learn a little bit more about that. Sure. So could you tell us a bit more about, this is a greenfield site, is it? And today, when we're doing this recording, it's coming towards the sort of end of 2022. So we're some way off, but where is the site at today in terms of construction and development? Has any work started on the site? Have the contracts been let for the early stage construction and things like that? Could you give us a bit of an overview on that, please?
Sure. The reclamation process has taken place. And so where maybe a year ago, it was still a part of Osaka Bay, a little swampy areas and what have you. But now the land itself is pretty much formed. I think the time now is being spent to sort of ground the site so that the things can be built on top. Mm-hmm. Said differently, there is nothing on it other than basically a flat land with maybe a few trucks carrying the gravels and dusts and what have you. So nothing is built yet. The timeline is that in April of 2023, the organizer will hand over the land to participating corporate partners or participating international countries to start construction of each individual pavilions. Now, not just only the pavilions, but the organizer will build other venues within the Expo 2025 site. So basically, a lot of activities will start happening on the site starting April of next year. Said differently, there then now has potential pictures and graphics movies now finally coming out with a little glimpse of what the Expo 2025 is going to look like. But until April 2023, or even a little bit further down the line, we won't see anything resembling of Expo 2025 just yet.
Okay. It's going to be exciting because every time like I visit the organizer, they are located very high up so that we could see where the site is going to be, but nothing happens. But in 4 months or 5 months from now, lots of activity will be going on, and then we could see it, and it's quite exciting.
So exciting, and I'm sure it's as you're describing that, it's coming to my mind how they often do these time-lapse videos where they show the construction. It looks very sped up, right? And I'm sure that's already underway and being thought of, and I can't wait to see some of that. It will be incredibly exciting to see it taking shape, and the sort of leading edge design and construction, I'm sure will be something that will be very spectacular for us all to see and take part in. So I can't wait for that. In terms of the contracts, Kay, do you have any knowledge? Have some of those early stage contracts been let for construction and design and things like that? Any ideas where that's at today?
Yes, looking at the organizer website where they announce for procurements or they announce for the winning bids, pretty much the basic construction element of Expo 2025. For an example, pathways or transports and what have you, seems to be already procured. The tenders have been out. The businesses on the private sector taking on these tenders have been identified, and they're pretty much standing by, probably. Dentsu is not in the business of construction, so I'm not part of that. But I'm sure given the April timeline, I would assume the discussion is about logistics. The assignment's already made. So different plots are assigned to different contractors, at what timing, which pieces would happen logistically, and probably that dialogue is taking place prior to the April handover. Obviously, all of the construction cannot start all at the same time because there's too much volume of construction and logistics, and it will just be a chaotic process. And so there's probably some sort of a progressive logistic process in place, and each contractor needs to be on the same page to make sure that things move smoothly. And so probably that's already taking place as we speak. Now, other parts of the Expo content, for an example, who builds the International Pavilion? Who builds, let's say, lavatories? Who provides toilet paper, for an example? These can happen probably a little bit further down the line, closer to the opening date. Construction naturally needs to happen, in the beginning. So different programs at a different timeline in terms of procurement and who has and who is yet to type of program.
Steve, let me step in a little bit about this topic. Because we have been supporting Expo 25 organizer to develop a program. But anyway, generally speaking, when we are talking about the event organizer or event preparation, okay, of course, if it takes procurement takes a long lead, for example, like construction takes a long time. Just you cannot build a building within 2 days. Of course, it takes a couple of years to build it. That's why that takes part early stage. And then procurement services takes less like a lead time. So that's why like a case said that the service providers are waiting until, so it's going to be probably 23, 24, 25. They start seriously just procuring those services. Whereas infrastructure type procurement is taking place now. So otherwise, they cannot be ready by then. So just, by looking at that, probably this year, now is the time for organizer to procure infrastructure type procurement services. And then probably shifting to more like a logistic type where just, they need transportation, they need hotels, accommodation, those types also takes a long time to procure it. They need to prepare for it. And that being taking place next. And the last piece is going to be services. Services, they need less lead time. And that's why that comes last.
Got it. Very clear. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Injecting a little bit on that is, building on top of Uchida-san's comment is, for an example, a company like us, Dentsu, which is basically an advertising and communications expert, has participated and has worked with the organizer in the planning portion of different programs, different promotional programs, different programs that they would like to put in place. Because we have an extensive experience with large-scale events similar to Uchida-san, and we also have done multiple expos in the past, both Japan and outside of Japan. We take that knowledge so that we can help the organizer plan either operationally or any process planning structures that they would need. They had those procurement out earlier, for which we were able to win those procurement and provide support in those areas. So yes, Uchida-san had mentioned different types of programs needed, different timelines, and so forth. Yes,
it makes perfect sense. Thank you. Very, very well clarified. And on this point, one of the things that's coming to my mind is I can think back to, gosh, it's sort of 10 years ago now, when here in the UK, we hosted the Olympics in London and other areas of the UK. But of course, and during that time, I think on the UK side, we gained an awful lot of knowledge through going through the process of hosting that event and planning and building and going through the stages as you're describing. But of course, since then, we gained a lot of knowledge there. But over in Japan, you've had a number of big international events, but two particularly large ones that come to my mind. There was the Rugby World Cup, I remember very well. And then you had the Olympics a year or two ago. Obviously, the timing of that got heavily impacted by coronavirus. But you've had those two major events and several others. And I guess there's a huge amount of knowledge that's been acquired on the Japan side, on the government side, and on the private sector side from those two events that I guess can be carried forward into the expo in Osaka in 2025. But that said, acknowledging that there probably is a huge amount of experience in Japan and in the government side and the private sector side, lots of knowledge that can be put into the project. My question is, do you think, and this is a tough question for me to ask you, but I'm still going to ask it, do you think there could still be any opportunities somewhere in the pipeline, maybe a little later on, perhaps with services, etc., but anywhere in there, do you think there could be opportunities for overseas international companies to become involved and become part of the tender process and be able to offer everything? Or do you think Japan domestically will be able to cover everything? What are your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Okay, should I start first?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. Well, and then, it depends. My answer is going to be depends. What you're talking, what do you mean by opportunities? Well, if a company, international company defines opportunity as a big business here in Japan from Expo 25, I would say if they are looking for large volume businesses here in Japan from Expo 25, maybe I would say if just they start planning to be involved in Expo 25, I would say maybe it's too late, or maybe it is a little bit difficult for them to step in from now.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a bit too close to the deadline, right?
Yeah. However, if you are talking about the opportunity to get into a business to develop a business base here in Japan, or maybe that's or maybe to try to think about how they can come up with a business partnership with Japanese companies. There are quite few opportunities I believe exist from Expo 25. For example, let me give you some example. Like you said, okay, construction is coming up soon, very soon, and then international participants, meaning international countries who are going to participate in Expo 25, needs to engage construction company in Japan to build their own pavilions. Well, Expo 25 organizer had what we call the IPM. Where like all the participants come to one place and then have a conference. Just very recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where they are talking about the progress of how international participating countries having engagement with Japanese construction companies. And then it is my understanding that not all international countries have already contracted with Japanese construction companies. Some of the countries are very, very hard to find construction company in Japan that they can work with.
Okay.
So that meaning that demands exceeds the capacity as of today.
Right.
From that point of view, but construction industry is a very heavily regulated industry here in Japan, so that international companies can come in and then provide construction services. That's not the case. So hopefully, what they need to do is that they have opportunities, but they come in and then try to find partner companies here in Japan. So that they can get into the business, and that will maybe just we can touch on later. But that is going to be the basis for a particular company, international companies, to have a base in Japan for future projects as well.
Yeah, got it. Very helpful. Thank you. Kei, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure, I'll build on that. As Uchida-san mentioned, yes, but I think I'm generally going to group this into 3 big buckets. One bucket being the expo organizer budgets and all the procurement that come out of the organizer. There is another bucket where it may or may not be directly expo related, but a lot of activities will take place surrounding the expo. So outside of the expo site, there will be a lot of activities. There will be a lot of businesses with the companies and, you know, with the consumers here in Japan as well. Do you go after that business opportunity? And the third, the bucket is a longer term perspective. 2025 is simply a launching pad moment to enter Japan. For an example, you might have a longer vision of how you want to be in, let's say, 2030 or 2035. As you spend more time in Japan doing business, you know, how do you want to shape your business here? And simply using a 2025 as an opportunity to start that journey. So it depends on which bucket you go after, and obviously which industry that you want to go after would dictate, you know, the opportunities that you may find and you may not find. Now, naturally, Japanese central government, the national government, has its own growth agenda, which is tied into Expo 2025, obviously, namely in the field of pharmaceuticals, medical devices, the mobilities, the smart communities, energy area, education, consumer retail. Osaka is aggressively pushing for integrated resorts, for example. So, and many more. So there are industries that the national government and regional government is pushing to boost, tying it into an Expo 2025. So that can fall under all three buckets that I mentioned earlier. But you know, when you mention about an expo opportunity, don't just look at the first bucket. There are other buckets as well. The reason why I also mention about other buckets and not necessarily focusing on the first bucket is it may be relevant here that recently, especially in the last few months, the Japanese yen has struggled against foreign currency. So the prices of a lot of materials being imported into Japan has risen from a Japanese yen standpoint. So the construction budget needs to increase, and other factors affected by the exchange rates, the COVIDs, and what have you. So I'm sure the original budgeting is really becoming very tough to meet. And so that's where the first bucket will be challenged. And you probably have to find creative ways to tap into the first bucket. Now, obviously, the second bucket and third bucket is in a similar situation, but looking at it in a bigger area or looking at it on a longer term perspective will probably shed different perspective into those exchange rate challenges or COVID challenges. So, you know, keep your eye open, wide. Don't just look at the first bucket.
Of course, that's great advice. And the way you've just explained that just makes it so clear to think about that from a strategic point of view. And in fact, that might lead us in, if we think about the example of the third bucket, you know, we've spoken a little bit about the opportunities that may or may not be there for overseas companies with bucket number one and moving into bucket number two. But if we look at bucket number three, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because for overseas companies and UK companies that may be thinking strategically about the Japanese market and entering the market and building business there, this could certainly be, this event could be a kind of springboard to be part of that strategic plan and that longer term plan, right? And particularly when you look at the themes, if in any way any international companies are related to any of those amazing themes, this could be a great opportunity to come over to Japan, to learn more, to connect, to make relationships and use that as a strategic platform to build business. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, Minami-san?
Well, first of all, like from based on using my background, it's just like, well, there's a direct link, and then maybe Kay can expand a little bit more. But first of all, well, from an event industry point of view, well, we had a Rugby World Cup 2019 and Tokyo 2020. And then Expo 25 is next. However, just like this trend is moving on, and then just we are going to have another major event in 25, World Athletics in Tokyo, in 26, Asian Games in Nagoya, and then 27 Horticulture Expo in Yokohama. And then, hopefully just, we can host 2030 Winter Olympic Games in Sapporo. So we have lots of major international events coming up. So from a very, very narrow point of view, a major international events industry, there are large opportunities here in Japan to be part of those events. So the 25 could be a very, very first step for international companies to be part of Japanese industry here in Japan, for major events. That at least just one thing just I could say. And Kei, do you have any additional comments?
Yes, thank you, Uchida-san. What Steve mentioned earlier about international firms coming into Japan with an opportunity of Expo as a springboard. Interesting to note, it's not just for international companies. We have many Japanese clients, and when we communicate to our clients about Expo opportunities, not all of our clients will be participating with an Expo for various reasons. But we counsel that don't just look at Expo 2025 as a one-time activity. You need to look at it with a longer-term perspective. What do you want to do before? And what do you want to be after? And with that perspective and vision, then what do you want to do in 2025 to further boost that longer-term objective vision and programs? And that's what we typically counsel our clients, Japanese clients too. So I'm sure that it's the same for existing international companies operating in Japan, or any future inbound companies that may, decide to enter Japan. So again, look at a longer term, how you want to leverage the 2025 opportunities. Again, Uchida-san mentioned that large-scale events, international events are also continue to come on the timeline. So that might be an interesting point of view as well.
And good point, Kate. Thank you. And then another point I would like to add is Expo 25 probably just for those international events, lots of a major company in Japan are participating, and it's a great place to create a network among those companies. And as a E&Y who have been involved in Rugby World Cup 2019 and Tokyo 2020, we have expanded our business network within that Rugby World Cup and Tokyo 2020 community among Japanese companies. One of them is Dentsu, where Nemoto is from. So just by participating those international events, you are going to be exposed to great companies here in Japan. So a great opportunity for international companies as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great point, and bringing out those bigger picture values and the need to have a more strategic view. I think a point, really valuable points that you guys are making, and that's coming across very, very clearly. And I guess the other thing,
another relevant point of view is, I was listening to Uchida-san, is that these large events tend to be seen as catering for large companies with large budgets, large pockets. And so what about us with smaller pockets? Some may ask. And my counsel would be creative. You don't have to be doing everything by yourself. Meet people from Japanese companies, for an example, or other UK-based companies, and work together so that you will form a larger bucket, or larger pockets, so to speak. So don't just discard Japan or Expo or any other future opportunities down the line simply because you feel that you're not large enough. I would recommend that you be creative in that area as well.
That's great thinking, and that links through to an early point we spoke about kind of partnerships and collaborating,
Correct.
and also the opportunity through networking, through getting involved in this event and potentially meeting those right partners. So that whole thing comes together very nicely. Yeah. And the other bit I was just going to mention here that was occurring to me as we were talking about this is we shouldn't miss the opportunity for internationals to come and know more about the Osaka and the Kansai region as part of visiting the expo, because we know that Tokyo is the area that catches a lot of attention with international companies thinking they have to be there and they should be there. But I'm very, very well aware that so many international companies actually set up their base in the Kansai region, in Osaka, and there's many reasons why it's very beneficial to do that. And this would be another good opportunity to become much more familiar with that area and that region. And I know the local authorities, you spoke about the city government or city council and the prefecture. There's many sort of programs and and initiatives that they offer to support and attract companies in and explain why the region is good. So it's another good opportunity to have a look at that region in addition as well. So many benefits coming along there. Okay. I wanted to just sort of coming towards a bit of a conclusion now. One extra bit I just wanted to make sure we've got some real clarity on. We spoke a little bit earlier about these pavilions and the country pavilions, and we touched on that. And let's just make sure that we're sort of explaining to the audience very clearly. So as I understand it, the basic idea is that many different countries around the world will have a pavilion within the site. But could you gentlemen just sort of explain a little bit more about that? Minami-san, would you like to go first and tell us a bit more about
Yes, well, there are three types of pavilions, type A, type B, type 3. And then basically like a type A is pavilion or international companies where just they come in and then they build their own pavilions. Type B is going to be type B and type C buildings are going to be provided by expo organizer, and then just like infit, outfit and infit, and type B, type C. Type C is more like a less fit, customization by international countries participants. Type B is more like a more outfit and by international countries. So there are three types. And then, so those companies, and the first come in is going to be type A because they need to build their own pavilion. So, well, type A is going to be very active very soon, like Nemoto-san said, starting from April 2023. And type B and type C, first, organizers are going to build their buildings, and then just comes in next. And does it answer?
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah.
It answers very clearly. Thank you. That's very helpful to understand that. Yeah. And I presume each of the individual countries, whether they end up going for type A, type B, or type C, the plan for what they do with their pavilion is down to the individual countries, right? That's their opportunity to showcase and interface their interaction in line with the theme of the bigger event. Yeah, I've got it.
Of course, there are lots of guidance issued by organizers.
Yeah,
but within that guidance, yes, it's countries. It's up to countries what they would like to do with their pavilions.
Understood. Yeah, that sounds very clear. I mean, Kei, is there anything else to add to that, or do you think we've covered that pretty well?
Yes, I think Uchida-san has pretty much covered it. What happens in those pavilions, whether it's type A, type B, or type C, depends on what each country wants to send out as their message. Now, remember that the last expo just ended in Dubai, 2020, although it happened in 2021, just a few years back. And there's only a 4-year gap between the expo prior. And so there were messages, messages showcased in Dubai 2020 by these different countries, and it will basically carry that over and what they want to communicate in 2025, obviously toward the achievement of sustainable goals, SDGs, and other programs that each country has in their own program. And so what they want to message may be different from country to country, and therefore the content will be different from one country to another. Some smaller countries may be a little bit different. The leading countries, with Taipei particularly, will have their own programs and agenda and objectives. But maybe for smaller countries, they may be aligned as a region, for example. They communicate what they want to communicate internationally, not just only as a single country, but as the issues of the region as well. And so Type A, Type B, Type C would probably have very unique differences in what they want to have in their own pavilions. So very interesting to see, how they would start coming out. Yeah.
It will be amazing. And what another great learning opportunity for visitors to the Expo in 2025 to come and have a look at what each of the individual countries' agenda and priorities and themes are that they're working on. So yeah, it's going to be an amazing event. And I'm beginning to understand why 28 million people are anticipated to come along. So it's going to be incredible.
And there's always a soft element to the hard element of the pavilion. The pavilion is an infrastructure, it's hard, and a lot of the experiential and virtual, for an example, are probably programmed and made in advance. But there are events, and there are what's called a national day, where, for example, UK would probably have their own UK National Day type of an opportunity. So there are many soft elements to the international participation, which can be very unique to that particular day. So within that 184 days, a visitor coming in to a particular day may experience a different international pavilion from same visitor coming on a different day. So I would pay attention to not just the hard element of the pavilion, but the soft side of the expo as well.
Great, thank you. Very, very clear and very exciting. I'm getting so excited here. The more I hear about this, I'm thinking after we finish this recording, I'm going to go and book my flights for 2025 if they're available. Getting quickly.
Please.
Try and get a discount offer on a flight if I book early.
You can come this weekend. You can come this
Thank you.
Nothing there yet.
Yes,
we're here.
Come and have a look at the site. Yeah.
Uchida-san and I are here. So
good. That's very tempting. Very tempting. And I will just mention at this point, and it depends a little bit. My next point I'm bringing in depends a little bit on when individual people actually listen to this podcast and catch up with it. But as of the time recording here today, I do know that the tender process for the UK pavilion has actually recently commenced, but we're still within the deadline. I think from memory, the deadline is the 9th of December 2022 for the initial, I think it's the sort of expression of interest, or the first round of the tender process.
Right.
So we'll put the link for that tender next to this podcast on the website, so that if there's any interested parties that may be interested to have a look at that and potentially get involved in the bidding process, the opportunity in the window is still there at the moment. So we'll make sure the information is provided for anyone listening in on that.
Sorry, can I step in a little bit?
Please, yes, of course, absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry, just because I know that this podcast, the main audience is UK companies, and then just want to let you know, and probably people understand it. People have already known it, but the UK is one of our favorite countries, international countries. By Japanese love UK. So. And UK pavilion is going to be one of the most favorite destination at the Expo 25. I can guarantee that. So we are very, very excited.
That's extremely kind of you to say. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And that's a very kind comment as we come towards the conclusion, and we really appreciate that. And actually, at this point, it's only befitting of me to thank both of you, gentlemen. Yeah, I know you're extremely busy men. I know you've got a lot on your plate at the moment. So catching some time where we could get both of you together to join in this discussion has been so valuable, and you've shared so many wisdoms. And I think we've given a very good overview and an introduction to the Expo and what it's about, and a lot of the information behind that. We will, just for everyone sort of listening in, we will be planning to do some more podcasts and sharing more information on the expo as we get closer to the date. You've already heard from our two guests that there's so many exciting steps in this journey. So much has happened already, but there's a lot more still to come. And we'll be certainly communicating more information as we get closer and closer to the date. So I hope everybody listening in has really enjoyed this podcast and found it very useful and very helpful. If you wish to, please reach out to either of these gentlemen if they can help you in any way. You have an idea of what their organizations do that they're representing. And if you need any help from either of them, feel free to look these gentlemen up and we can share their contact details. And thank you all for listening in. And just in conclusion, Kei, Minami, thank you both very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and thank you for sharing your skills and your experience. Let's look forward to an amazing expo. I can't wait. It's going to be great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Wow.
Bye-bye.